So that was our first proper ride, and of course we had a glorious victory. I don't think they even... No, they didn't get a single hit in. Well, they got a little close. I think that if I allowed Lendl to get any kind of hit in, I would have given up. I hate Lendl so much.
Consilta vidias.
Consilta vidias. Ligeratus.
Why yes, Hedwig, I'll go on a late night walk with you.
Qui sentirna.
So this is actually one part of the game that vexes me, because you basically can only ask one of these questions. So to kind of compensate for that, I'll pick this question for him to answer. And because I know the rest of these, I will explain them. He got the wagon basically because he met a friend who you'll hear referred to later on, Sandalwood, who told him where to find this black wagon, and he went out and found it. I believe, yes, he had to basically dig it out because it was buried in sand, and basically just went on from there. As to why you can't conduct the rites yourself, you are not physically healthy. Your time in the Southern Sandfolds really did a number on you, and also, this is an important note, when you're exiled, the way that you're exiled is literally you are thrown off a waterfall at the edge of the world, and you land in the downside. It's a very traumatic experience, and the reader was disabled by it. And so the lack of physical fitness makes it extremely difficult for the reader to conduct the rites. In addition, the reader is the only one who can use the Book of Rites to coordinate the triumvirate. And without that advantage, these three who are not used to the rites, who have not been at it for years like the other triumvirates, wouldn't stand a chance. As to what happens if you refuse to help, the game ends. Is the out-of-character reason. In character, they respect your choice, but it does mean that no one gets to go home, right? Which is why the game kind of assumes that you're going to help. So, I will ask why he was exiled, which in the downside is a rather personal question. It's kind of considered a faux pas to ask someone that unless you're very close, but because I like to imagine that my reader thinks of herself as close to Hedwyn, as good friends, strangers to friends to lovers.
Some terras.
I will now gaze at the stars. Oh, right, the stars in the sky, not the stars in Hedwyn's eyes. Sorry, I got distracted there. Jomur, the Dusk Star.
Kirafacitas. Peleosanta.
Sima quadre.
Certabase.
Guran salashe.
Gratiam.
I just love those little exchanges where you instantly get a sense of, like, what everyone's specialty is. You know, you automatically know that Ruki's kind of in charge of wagon maintenance, and you get a sense that Jody is kind of the security chief. What's Hedwyn's role? You will see soon. Aside from moral support, which he kind of naturally fills. Someone wants to have a chat with us, and it's Ruki. Ah, yes. A very important character moment for Ruki Greentail. Very tense, personal moment. It's such a moment of interpersonal connection here. He really confides in you. You see how hard it is for him, and it's very hard for us as the character, as the person speaking to him, to really come through on this one.
Demolition. Assim pegar.
Yep.
C'est femme.
And of course, the answer is... it makes you look very handsome and quite distinguished. So, character moments like that, so that one was rather silly, and I played it up to be silly. But character moments like that, which can be silly or serious, can actually give bonuses or debuffs to characters for the next right. So in this case, Ruki got +1 hope, and hope is the attribute that affects how long someone is banished. Some of you may have noticed in that last right that it took a lot longer for Jodariel to get back onto the field when she was banished than it took for Ruki to get back on the field. That's because Jodariel has very low hope, all demons do. Every character race kind of has standard statistic or stat distributions. Demons typically have very high glory, the offensive stat that determines how much damage they deal, and very low hope, which is a great way of communicating story elements through game elements. But so this means that Ruki will come back to the fight a little bit faster in the next right. And all sorts of different character interactions can result in that. Usually given very small buffs like that one, you know, +1, +2, -1, -2. Not something that will make a huge difference, but in a right, you know, especially with as many things going against us as in True Nightwing Mode, every little bit counts. So now we get to make our way to the Jomior Valley. Slightly whimsical animation. But it doesn't feel too whimsical. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel silly. It just feels fun. It has character, I guess is a way of saying it. So curs, I'll clarify, are the dogmen. Ruki is a cur. Oh yes, the stowaway. Another one of the best characters in the game.
Snap.
Do it, Jody. Yeah, what do you think's gonna happen here?
Dolorantes.
Yep. It tells you something about Jodariel, right? That was another example of Pyre's great writing, because it sets up a certain expectation based on the prejudices we would assign to a character that looks like this, and it subverts them, and it creates a much more interesting character moment than if it hadn't subverted our expectations there. It creates a much more interesting character in general by causing the design of a character to contradict with what they actually act like. But even in little ways, you can see the ways that Jodariel actually shows her true colors. You know, she has this nice kind of floral scarf going on. You'll see that on her breastplate. There are some scratches, and we can get into that a little bit later. But suffice it to say that those have some meaning there, as does this brooch of hers. Anyway, all that is to say, Supergiant Games does a great job at character design and a great job at linking character design to character writing. The 8 scribes, very important characters. They're the ones who wrote the book. They are sandalwood.
Kimberita. Fare graseta.
Videre nantis?
Vistalia.
So this is interesting, because that little effect there means something, but the game doesn't tell you that right off the bat. This little everything fades to black thing, and means that something in particular is happening, but the game doesn't come right out and say it. And even the writing here indicates something, but it's so subtle that on my first time through I didn't pick it up, and once it actually all came together, I kind of smacked my head. So it all rhymes with gray. I'll consider some other possibilities, so that everyone watching can see what the options are. This one cannot possibly be right, can it? You sense her name is Bay. Gay the Grey. She could be a J. Maybe could be Tay. Looks as though she could go by the name of Nay. Or Che. Or Lay. You can see how much fun that they had writing these out. I do like this one. She could definitely be a Fae, of that you have no doubt. Now, because I'm sort of recreating my personal canon playthrough, I'll have to go with what I originally considered for her, which is, of course, Fae.
Vistalia. Nita Polameta.
Fae the Fair. Oh, I love her so much. So Faye is actually also a normal human, like Hedwyn, but she is what's called moon-touched, which is a subgroup of humans who are basically kind of neurodivergent coded. They're not quote-unquote normal. They have very different ways of thinking. A lot about Fae and other moon-touched people kind of indicates that they are kind of autistic-coded. They're not evil or bad or anything. They're just different. They act and behave differently. They think differently. And I think that it was very interesting that Supergiant Games chose to include them and to write them up in this particular way, because later on we will probably see what it was that caused Faye to be exiled, and you'll see kind of how Supergiant Games used the idea of the Moon-Touched to kind of talk about structural oppression, ableism, kind of anti-neurodivergent thinking, so on and so forth. And so even though Pyre isn't overtly making any social commentary, it definitely kind of has a lot under the hood to say about a lot of different things regarding justice and law enforcement, sort of. You know, how we approach maintaining a civil society and how we approach law and how breaking the law works and what we do with it. But we can talk more about that at length at another time. For right now, let's move on with the game.
Huh? Macredius Taliorata?
So as you can see through that bit of dialogue, she's definitely some form of neurodivergent, right? You know, talking to the wagon, forming empathetic bonds with it, calling it little brother, etc. and so forth. And there's a lot of different ways you could read that. You could read it as being autistic coded, you could read it as some form of quote-unquote mental disorder, in the form of, like, for example, delusions. some form of psychosis, a weaker grip with reality, so on and so forth. I'm not an expert on that particular quarter of mental disorders, so please forgive me if I'm stepping out of line. So I refuse to say much more about it. I'm just acknowledging that that is potentially one way that you could read her, aside from just autistic coded, because I'm certain that there are people out there who read her as some form of different that isn't necessarily neurodivergent or autistic coded, and I don't want to go without acknowledging that. That being said, let's consider some options.
Sapisa.
Samisara Sumana.
So, vocations. Sometimes there will be some spare moments where we can pursue our vocations, and we can find something valuable for cash. We can mentor a companion and basically give them free experience, right? I think it's 1,000 enlightenment that we give them every time we mentor them. So it kind of speeds up the process of their leveling up, thereby making individual companions stronger, or we can study in private. And when we do so, we get small global bonuses, right? So it makes the whole team, no matter who's on the team, a little bit better. So it's a choice of making everyone a little bit better, or making one person significantly better at a time. I traditionally choose to study in private for a long while, and then as the game goes on, I start to mentor companions once I've unlocked all of the global bonuses, and that's what I'll do here. So in this case, I usually just kind of go right down the line, so I'll start with the Teachings in Wisdom, which increases hope. So now, henceforth, every rite I conduct, my team will always have +1 hope. So once again, the game doesn't want to punish us for our early choices, so we'll get a boon either way. The question is just, which boon do we want? Do we want it to be swift, or do we want it to be strong? In this particular case, because I know what's coming up, I'm going to choose to be swift. Jomur Many Manes. The Alpha Chief, the Cur Scribe. This is another nice little thing that Supergiant does, is they'll let... Despite the fact that we are in definitely a setting where the supernatural is quite commonplace, they still make it a little up in the air as to what degree the supernatural is taking place, right? Especially with regards to kind of certain things, like how much of this is the scribes, like the spirit of the 8 scribes, and how much of this is just us getting a good night's sleep. They kind of leave it in the air. I think that's an interesting choice in a setting like this, where we're surrounded by the corpses of eldritch monstrosities and throwing celestial orbs around into magical pyres. They still have a little bit of ambiguity regarding what's supernatural and what's not. So now we get to interact with the slug market.
Shit voice.
Hi, Falconron.
Hit him. My voice voice. Destacare. Laki Daki knowledge, eh?
So normally this is a significantly smaller selection, but because this is True Nightwing Mode, everything is on the menu. So we'll get rid of this. So all of these are amulets that give bonuses ranging from the small to the large that you can use to kind of tailor your experience. And all of them are upgradable using the Stardust here. So pinches and piles and such will upgrade it to various degrees, increasing the bonuses that they grant. Most of this I can't afford because it's early game. Still going to take a look through and see if there's anything that comes to my mind that I'd want. Oh, right light. It's a very useful one. Bright light's a pretty good choice as an early game talisman. It increases the size of your pyre, not by much at first, but as you upgrade it more and more and more, the effect becomes more pronounced. I'll actually get some Stardust to do just that. Falcon Ron is canonically the most annoying character in the entire downside. Hello, Hedwin. I mean, hello, Hedwin. Searching for the right words. Me too.
Serem tave. Jaheritarimas. Nesinterra.
And this is where my shipping dynamics get complicated.
Veremitandas. Nimkaranam.
Yes, you can actually unlock bios for them. Oh, not in here. I don't care about that right now. I usually like to go through the Book of Rites, but because this is a Let's Play, and you're all here for the action, I'm not going to go flipping through a book, but Common Room lets me look at my companions and things that I know about them. I'm not going to read through this whole thing, I'm just going to put it up here, so if you're interested you can pause the video and read it through and learn a little bit more about the people that I'm working with. They actually also give you the astral signs for them. So if you want to determine your fantasy astrological oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Compatibility with these fictional characters, I guess you can do that. It's not actual astrology, so I guess you'll just kind of have to figure it out for yourself. So there's that. Man is